Hey guys, welcome back to Diablo 4. Today we'll take a look at the full gear up guide for Season 6 and Vessel of Hatred. There are quite a few ways in which you can get a ton of uniques very fast, new ways to acquire Ancestrals, also mythical gear eventually, plus quite a lot of awesome events that can give you hundreds of millions of gold, as well as crafting mats, boss summoning items, and everything else in between. We're going to cover all of that so that as soon as you hit level 60, you can immediately jump in, get a build going, and become powerful right away. So right from the get-go, one of the best loot farming methods is just doing the Undercity over and over. It has one of the highest concentration of loot, especially if you finish it with 4 attunement and also take down the loot goblin during it. Plus you have so much more control over the type of loot that drops at the end via the tributes and the bargaining mechanic. So you're going to find the brazier that opens the portal to the Undercity right here in Khrazd. And you're going to have a couple of options to slot in a tribute and then to bargain to control over that gear. So tributes, once you hit level 60, chances are that you're going to already have a couple of these rare variants right here. They can drop from pretty much anywhere, even from a regular Undercity run, but the rare ones specifically can give you extra guaranteed items if you finish that run with at least one level of attunement. So the Harmony one, for example, gives you guaranteed runes, which can be actually useful if you want to craft mythical gear eventually or use it on your own gear. You can also go for the Titans, which gives you extra boss summoning items, again if you're farming for mythical gear, and of course also Refinement, which gives you guaranteed crafting mats. But these tributes can also go to like legendary quality, which can guarantee ancestrals, and even unique quality, which can increase chances for even more mythical gear. Now, once you put in that tribute, you're also going to want to go ahead and bargain. And bargaining is going to give you even more control over the type of loot that drops at the end. So let's say, for example, you're hunting with gear that has skill ranks on it. You can just spend a bit of Forgotten Souls for that. Or maybe you're hunting for class uniques. You can spend Opals and you're going to get like 2, 3, 4, maybe even more than that, depending on your luck. It's just going to influence that. It doesn't really guarantee it, so do keep that in mind. Now, once you are inside of the run, your first order of business is to max out your attunement. Try to aim for 4 out of 4, as that's going to give you the max loot chest at the end with the most amount of gear. And you do that by just taking down enemies normally, but especially so by lighting up these blue braziers you find along the map. Usually there are 3 per each level, so always fill them up and make sure that you reach the final boss stage on the 5th map with 4 out of 4 no matter what. And also along the way, absolutely pay attention to the loot goblins that spawn. You're going to see them again with a blue icon on the map. They tend to teleport around but just deal damage very fast, and this is going to give you a second chest once you finish this full Undercity run. So once you go in and take down the final boss, you're going to notice 2 loot chests now with a ton of that gear influenced by the tributes and the bargaining that you have done at the beginning of your run. So yeah, like you can see, for example, here I'm getting a lot of exquisite blood, a lot of tributes, a lot of distilled fear, which are of course the boss summoning items because of the type of tribute that I put at the beginning. Now, once you're done with this, you're going to naturally just tamper with the gear, make it stronger and masterwork it. So I'm going to explain that in just a little bit. But in the meantime, your natural progression from here is eye level 800 gear, or specifically in this case, ancestral items. So that naturally has a higher chance to drop the higher you go in the torment level, which is tied to you progressing in the pit. So you're going to start with pit 20 to unlock torment 1, then pit 35 for torment 2, and so on and so forth as you progress to torment 4. But that is separate. In the meantime, let's say you want ancestral gear. Well, there are 2 things you can do. Well, one thing that actually shoots 2 birds with 1 stone, and that's going to be nightmare dungeons. Nightmare dungeons have an increased chance at the end of them to give you ancestral items compared to some of the other activities. It's not 100% guaranteed, but the chance is quite reliable, and it only goes up with your torment level. But along the way, nightmare dungeons have another major use, and that is that it gives you the max of those crafting materials that you need, like the Opals and everything else in between. As you can see right here, as we just take down enemies, you gain a ton of those as drops from them. That is because literally anything that you take down during nightmare dungeons or any event that you complete, including taking down the final boss, gives you a ton of these tier 3 crafting mats you see dropping all the time. So if you're lacking those and really need them to upgrade your gear, you're going to do a lot of nightmare dungeons. Plus, on top of the fact that you get better chances at ancestral gear. Now, since we talked about making gear better, let's also go over tampering and masterworking, because like I said before, you cannot masterwork an item without fully tampering it. So tampering is something that you can do in the second last tab right here at the blacksmith. You're going to notice that you can apply multiple affixes from different categories on one single piece of gear. On regular legendaries, that's 2 extra affixes from different categories. So in this case, let's take this pair of boots. We can apply an utility on it. So in this case, I'm using a centipede build. That is why I want to go for a scourge size increase. So I'm just going to gamble until it actually gives me the stats that I need. Now, it happened on the first try, which is really nice. But if it doesn't, you're going to have to repeat this and consume your crafting mats until you actually get the one that you need. And this gives us 1 out of 1. So for the second affix category, we go with mobility. We can also apply that second one. And this has fully tampered our item. Now you can get more of these tampering categories right here by just finding skill manuals like these ones right here. You're going to find them from just completing content, especially hell tides, but pretty much anything can drop them, especially from chests and taking down bosses. And only now can we go ahead and fully masterwork this item, which we can do in the last tab at the same blacksmith. So this is the same old upgrade system. You can upgrade regular legendaries 8 times. Meanwhile, ancestrals and above can go up to 12 times. And every single incremental increase is 5% for all of your affixes. Plus, every 4 levels will give you a bonus 25% to a random of your existing stats on that specific gear. So if you do it like 8 times, that's 2 extra 25% that can go randomly to any of your stats, and that's pretty much it. And this is how you're going to also become a lot stronger, by hunting for these affixes that fit your gear and then also making sure you masterwork and give it even more bonus stats. Now, from this point on, there are a few more activities you can jump into for a lot more loot and hundreds of millions of gold as well. And one of them is the new Hatred Rising / Realm Walker event, part of Season 6. You're going to notice these appearing randomly on the map pretty much every hour. And at least in the pre-release version that I played last week, I was able to farm hundreds of millions of gold per one single run. I'm not sure if that's going to still be the case once the game launches, but there are many other benefits on top of the hundreds of millions of gold that you can get from this. So you're going to find them on the map. You're going to go in, notice the realm walkers appearing, interacting with it, will make it emerge from the ground, and then you just have to follow it, taking down all of the spawns that jump from that portal on its head. Eventually, you're going to also fight the realm walker itself, which is going to give you access to the portal towards the Seething realm. And inside the Seething realm, you're going to have again control over the type of loot that you can hunt for next. That's going to be done via this portal right here, which lets you control getting extra bonus summoning items, gold, which by the way is the one that gives you 300 million gold, crafting mats, and also extra equipment. But in this case, I want to show you the one with the gold and how busted it was on the pre-release version. So in this case, pausing right here, you can see I had 549 million gold. And then I went ahead, finished the quick dungeon over here, took down the final council / enemies. And as you can see from the drops, it jumped to 800 million right here, 874. So that was 320 million by just completing one single event. That will help you a ton if you're going to constantly masterwork items, constantly go ahead and just hunt for the best affixes, or if you just want gold in general to spend on stuff. This helps tremendously. But it goes the same if you're hunting for other items. You can also go for, again, gear, boss summoning items, and even crafting mats. Now, another thing that drops over here is the Seething Opal, and Seething Opals are also amazing at further giving you more drops. Once you activate them for the next 30 minutes, enemies will drop a lot more loot. So this can be extremely helpful if you're then going to jump into a hell tide. Plus, you're going to get a ton of extra XP towards the Zakarum NPC right here. So it has its own rewards track. It gives you even more loot, some very cool items in there, plus some really useful crafting mats that you will definitely need. So this is all going to be for 30 minutes. Now from here, another thing you can do is Infernal Hordes, and for the most part they follow the same like strategy as before. You're going to need those Infernal Horde compasses that drop randomly from any activity. They are quite rare, but they can still trigger relatively often. This is going to then give you access to the Horde levels, and of course there are some changes here specifically to the loot chest. So yeah, you're going to have that main equipment loot chest now costing 200 ether. Meanwhile, all of the others, like the gold and the master crafting materials one, will just consume any remaining amount of ether to give you the equivalent in crafting mats or in gold. So even if you have a very good run that, like for example, gave you 1000 ether, you can spend all of that on just the gold or the crafting mats if you need them. Meanwhile, for the actual run itself, any offering that gives you more Hellborn spawn rate, more Hellborn ether drops, or event spawn rate faster are going to be the best options, so that you can just take down a lot of Hellborn, a lot of enemies, and get a lot of ether very fast. And everything that doesn't give you boss spawns. Boss spawns actually prevent other smaller enemies to spawn during that event, so you really don't want to waste your time taking down bosses. But now you got your gear, maybe even masterwork. You've done all of this and are ready for the best final step, beyond just, generally progressing in the torment levels. Well, from this point on, we have the mythical gear. And mythical gear, besides just having a very small chance to drop from uber bosses, you can also directly craft them. And you can craft them in two places. One is at the jeweler, which gives you direct access to crafting specific mythic uniques, such as, for example, the Andariel's Visage if you're going with a very strong rogue build. But this is going to require 2 resplendent sparks, as well as some of these runes added in the new patch. Again, you can hunt for runes anywhere, and specifically if you want to guarantee drop for runes, you can also do the Undercity with that tribute that gives you guaranteed runes. Another option is to craft the mythical cache at the blacksmith instead. This will no longer give you a specialized item, it's just going to give you a random of the existing mythicals, but the cost is also reduced at only 2 of those resplendent sparks instead of also requiring those runes. So yeah, you can totally gamble on that as well. Also, if you finish the full season 6 track right here, you're going to guarantee get 1 resplendent spark from the destroyer's cache once you fully finish it with the last objective over here. Plus, of course, the first time defeating those uber bosses like uber Lilith, and yeah, pretty much all of the other former methods of getting them will also still work now, and you can yeah, definitely have at least 1 unique per season. That on top of the fact that you can also salvage mythical uniques that you might have gotten that you do not use. And speaking of not using, on a final note, you can also transmute some of the crafting mats needed to craft some of the boss summoning items at the occultist right here. You can see that some of them can be used at transmutation into different other summoning items like the shackles if you want them. So definitely pay attention to these as well, especially as you're just farming a ton of these uber bosses and eventually want to jump into the higher mythicals. Now, besides all of this, another couple of things you can do for extra loot is especially the barter mechanic, from just leveling up your mercenary XP and the barter. And specifically, each of these NPCs will have 2 of these bag legendary entries that will upgrade the barter NPC list in the middle of the den. So they might give you extra caches of loot that drop mobility legendaries, defensive legendaries, utility, and so on, pretty much for every single type. So it's worth maxing all of them out, all of these mercenaries, so that you can then buy them from the middle NPC right here. You're going to purchase these items as well as restocking the supply with the pale marks that you get by leveling up your mercenary barter, which you do infinitely, by the way. Once you max them out, you can still continue to level up and get more of those pale marks every 25,000 XP you gain for them. The other thing you can do is also complete Tree of Whispers. They also have an increased chance at Ancestrals, just like how Nightmare Dungeons do. So it's worth it to complete them, especially when you also do Hell Tides, to kind of shoot 2 birds with 1 stone. Pay attention to zones that have objectives for the Tree of Whispers in them, as you can easily just complete both of them, give all of that in, and get an increased chance at more loot, on top of the fact that the Hell Tide is a good source of loot itself. And that is pretty much it with the full guide. Let me know down below if there's anything else that you're doing in the new season or planning on doing. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.